Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says Haryana government says uncultivable land outside Old Gurugram, not Aravalis. Let us try and understand what this article is all about with respect to the Aravalis. Before that, let's understand some of the factual data which can be important from the preliminary examination point of view. What are these Aravalis? This is a mountain range. It passes through the state of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, and it also passes through Delhi as well. This can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. The highest peak in the Aravalis happened to be Mount Guru Shikha. It is the oldest range of fold mountains, and there are three major rivers and its tributaries which pass through the Aravali range. This includes Banas, Sahibi as well as Luni. Also remember, Ranthambore National Park, which is in Rajasthan, is also part of the Aravalli range. These are some of the important factual data with respect to the preliminary examination point of view. Now, if you look into the historical background, back in the 1500s, you had Akbar, who was ruling the large part of northwestern part of India. He also had one of the ministers called as Todarmal. He had come up with one of the laws called as the Land Survey and Settlement System. According to him, the Aravalis were called as the Gair Mumkin Pahar. What is this Gair Mumkin Pahar? Basically, it means uncultivable hill. So those regions in the Aravalis which have the uncultivable land in the hill region were called as the Gair Mumkin Pahar. So Gair Mumkin Pahar basically includes uncultivable wasteland. It can include those lands which cannot be used for agriculture, which cannot be used for horticulture, it cannot be used for animal husbandry, poultry farming cannot take place, and many other activities with respect to agriculture cannot take place in such a hill, which is what is called as the Gair Mumkin Pahar. Why are we discussing this? That is because we have the National Conservation Zone. What is this National Conservation Zone? According to the Regional Plan 2021, for the Delhi NCR region, there have been some zones in the Aravali region called as the National Conservation Zone. What is this conservation zone? It includes the forest, it includes the water bodies, it includes the rivers, groundwater recharge areas as part of the conservation zone. So what are we doing here? We are conserving this particular area which is categorized as Aravalis so that there is no construction activity that takes place in this particular region. Even if the construction activities happen in Aravali, the construction is only allowed for about 0.5%, and this is for the regional recreational activities which includes the regional parks as well as the sanctuaries. So other construction entities, other construction activities like commercial purposes, residential purposes, tourism purposes, real estate purpose cannot take place in this National Conservation Zone. So construction is strictly prohibited. It can be only used for recreational purposes. It can only be used for development of sanctuaries, which is in line with the conservation activities. If there are any other activities like real estate, tourism, commercial, residential, such activities cannot be taken up, says the Regional Plan 2021 for the Delhi NCR region. So basically, when we are speaking about the definition of the National Conservation Zone, it means that construction activity is only limited to about 0.5%. But what is happening in the present situation? Haryana government is planning to bring changes where it wants to bring changes in this 0.5%. We have the Aravalis which pass through Gurugram, they pass through Faridabad, they also pass through Mahendragarh as well as Rewari. But the Haryana government is considering one of the laws and its notifications which was passed in 1992 of the Ministry of Environment. According to this notification, Aravalis which pass through Gurugram would be considered as Aravalis, but those which pass through Faridabad will not be considered as part of Aravalis. So what is the government doing here? The Haryana government is bringing a change in the definition of the Aravalis, where only those parts which are part of Gurugram will be considered as Aravalis, where there will be conservation plans, but those which would be part of Faridabad will not come come under the original definition of regional plan of 2021, which means construction activity may happen in the near future if approval is given by the Haryana government in Faridabad. So the conservation status where there would be no construction for tourism real estate sector may change, and this will ultimately mean there will be dilution of loss for the industrial activities. So construction activity can take place in Faridabad, and this means that there is a close nexus between the political masters as well as the business entities, and ultimately this will dilute the Aravali range, says this article. So what would happen when you know the significance of Aravali? You would also know that Aravalis would be able to recharge the groundwater in this particular region. It can also moderate desertification as well, and at the same time it would be able to control air pollution in this region. But now what is happening? Change in the definition. So there will be construction activities in Faridabad. This may not happen in Gurugram, but there is construction activity which can start off in this particular region of Faridabad, and as a result the groundwater depletion will happen. There will be increase of desertification, and as a result what we will see is more dust storms from Haryana into Delhi. As of now, the Aravalis is acting like a barrier. It will prevent the air pollution, and at the same time the dust storms because of the Aravalis may not penetrate into Delhi. But now, since we are diluting these Aravalis in the Faridabad region, in the near future Delhi may also see a large scale dust storms that may enter the national capital region. This is one of the pointers. Apart from this, whenever there is groundwater that is maintained in that region, what it will also do is prevent the growth of the termites. How? Whenever there is water, what happens? There is cracks that are seen in the soil. This ultimately means termite population will not grow when there is excessive water in that particular region. But when there is water deficiency that happens in a particular region, what we will see is growth of termites. Whenever there is growth of termites, this also means the crop losses in that particular region will also increase, and at the same time farmers would not want to grow these type of crops like pulses. What is happening right now? Farmers are growing crops like pulses because there is water excess in this particular region, and at the same time there is no crop loss as well. So they're growing pulses in this region. But whenever the termite population increase because the drop in the groundwater occurs, farmers actually move from pulses to other crops like wheat. Why do they move to wheat? Because this will require more water, and at the same time when there is more water, this will also prevent the growth of termites. So ultimately the crop pattern in this particular region also starts changing because of the ill effects of the dilution of loss when it comes to Aravalis. So kindly remember, Aravalis, as we know, can trigger the change in the crop patterns. The water intensive wheat comes into picture, and ultimately this whole system that has been existing in this region in Haryana will also go for a toss. As a result, we have to wait and watch what decision will be taken by the Haryana government in the near future. Will they continue with this particular project? Yes, we all require development. Yes, we all require jobs. Yes, we also require growth and development as well. Such a development should be sustainable but should not be at the cost of environment. Why? If it is at the cost of the environment, we will have large scale implications felt by the human beings, and ultimately it is the humans who will be the casualty at the nature. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says foreclosure. What is this article speaking about? This article here is speaking about sports ethics. This article also discusses about the Indian Premier League. Am I going to speak about Indian Premier League? No. Am I going to ask you which is your favorite team? No, not at all. What I'm going to discuss in this article is that there are few players. It is not only restricted to cricket. It can also be football as well, where they give more importance to the league clubs rather than the national games where they represent their national teams. So the question is, should players be allowed to represent league clubs at the cost of national games? Is what is this article all about. Before we understand the ethical perspective, let's understand some of the basics with respect to the sports ethics. What is sports? Sports is nothing but it contributes to the individual development of that individual. So this person would have put in a lot of time. He would have understood how to acquire a particular skill. He would have put in sweat and blood during this particular period, and over a period of time there is personal achievement, skill acquisition, demonstration of ability, and at the same time this person can also keep himself or herself fit as well. So when it comes to sport, it is a collective effort where there is an individual player, there are coaches, there are associate team members as well, all come together, which provides an opportunity for social interaction. So what is the definition of sports ethics? When we look into the definition of sports ethics, it basically stands for code of conduct for promoting and ensuring healthy sporting practices. This can be broken down into two compartments. One is what is called as the institutional level, the other is the personal level. What is this institutional level? When it comes to the sports, there are different institutes that are established, different governing bodies that are established, different types of teams that are established. Let's say, for example, when it comes to the cricket in India, what we have is the BCCI, and when it comes to international cricket, what we have as a regulating body is the ICC. So these are the establishments that are put in place so that they would be able to regulate the operations of cricket. So what are these? When it comes to the sports ethics, there are different institutes. It can be different for different sports. So when it comes to cricket, what we have is the BCCI, and at the international level, what we have is the ICC. What does this institute do? Basically, when it comes to an sport, let's take the example of cricket, what comes into picture is the merit. So how good a batsman is, how good a bowler is, the merit will have to be taken into picture and not the influence of their fathers or their cricketing fraternity. So what comes into picture in institution is there is an establishment of an institution. This institution will have to understand the merit of that particular player. Is he right for that particular role will be decided by this institution, irrespective of which community he belongs to, the caste he belongs to, which region he belongs to, which cricket academy he belongs to. Only merit should be the criteria. So there should be no discrimination when it comes to the institutional capacity. So who will put this forward? We have the institutions which are established. These institutions put forward the legitimate claim of that particular player. Then there is ethics with respect to the personal as well. What is this personal ethics? Basically, this is something to do with that particular individual. Yes, in spite of the BCCI or the ICC, in spite of football having multiple other institutes of its own, there is that individual who also has to respect the ethics, the morals and values that have been sustained in the fraternity of sportsmanship. So an individual, when he is espousing such values, that is what is called as the personal ethics. So when it comes to code of conduct for promoting and ensuring healthy sporting practices, we require both the institutional support as well as individual support as well. So the sports ethics basically brings into picture the institutional paradigm where discrimination based on criteria is completely eliminated, and at the same time what we have is the personal support of the individual player where moral obligation to abide by the rules and regulations and playing by the practices of fair play all comes into picture. This is what is sports ethics all about. This also is based on a standard. What is the standard? These are set of principles which have to be followed by all the sportsmen irrespective of which sports they are playing. What is it? One is trustworthiness, next is respect, responsibility, fairness and caring. What is this trustworthiness? This is about engaging with the players. This is about posing trust in your fellow pals as well, and at the same time you always have to pursue the victory with honor, observe and enforce the spirit and letter of the rules laid in that particular sport. That is what is trustworthiness. Then we have something called as respect. What is respect? Is to treat the traditions of the sport and other participants with respect. There are cuss words that are used. This obviously have to be reduced. You have to respect your opposition as well. You have to respect the other team as well. So what derives from this particular aspect is the sportsmanship. sportsmanship. As much as we respect another party, another player, another countryman, the same is expected. So there is reciprocity principle, there is respect for the game, respect for that individual, and respect for the country. Then we have responsibility. What is this responsibilities? There is on-field responsibility, then there is off-field responsibility as well. What is this on-field responsibility? When you're playing the particular game, you have to run by the rules of the game. Let's say for example the ball tampering, this should not happen. Why? Because there are a number of people who are watching this particular game. You or a person might have set as an example for multiple other youngsters as well. So when you're performing an activity on the field, you have to ensure that there is a responsibility towards other people as well. That is on field. And off the field, how do you characterize yourself? How do you perform your activities? How do you engage with the people? All this is part of the responsibility as well, because there are millions of people who idolize the sportsman. If a person follows something off the field, the same is followed by people as well. So responsibility also comes when it comes to the sports ethics. Finally, we look at fairness, that is to abide by the high standards of the fair game. So you have to respect the spirit of the game, you have to comply by the rules of the game, you should not engage in drugs, you should not be taking up any of the injections. That is what is called as fairness. Let's say for example, if people are engaging in fairness, they should not take up any of the drugs which will increase the energy and the activity of the person. Finally, care should also be given to the respective people as well as the rules and regulations. To put this under one single umbrella, can we say these are the players who are representing that particular country? Why? Because they have been chosen from a population of millions, and ultimately these people will have to follow all the ethics that have been embedded as part of pillars of the sports. And when they represent the country, they not only play individually for the country, they represent the hopes of the people, they represent the hopes of billions of people, the cheers of people, the respect of people, the prayers of people, and ultimately the individual is not just representing himself as an individual, but he is representing the country values in itself. So can we say that whenever there is a sport or a gaming event, in such a scenario, what comes first is the country, followed by that individual goals and accomplishments. When we take this as a reference point, what is happening of late? There are a number of cricket players and there are also football players as well, or any other team sport as well. Whenever there is a league game where they play for the club matches, and you also have the national duty or the national responsibility, they are giving more importance to the club games, league games over the national duty. In such a case, can we say that they are not respecting the ideals of the sports ethics? Can we say they're going behind the money rather than the country which build them up? So in this particular case, what we are actually witnessing is a clash between the club versus the country. So individuals are forced to consider their commitment, prove their longevity with respect to the league games rather than the country games. So the question for you is, what are the ethical principles that are getting violated when league games are put forward and the national duty takes a step backward? In this particular backdrop, experts from the cricketing fraternity says if there are players who are prioritizing Premier League clubs over the national duty, such people should not be considered for selection by the cricketing board in the near future. So what is the need of the hour? The need of the hour is that we have to put in place strict rules and engagement. If there are people who are not complying by the national duty, going for the league games, such people should either be terminated from the national selection, and at the same time, if there are league clubs, the league clubs should also have certain rules and regulations where they have to put national duty first in spite of the league games, are some of the recommendations. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says a selective nuclear policy. The article here is speaking about North Korea's nuclear policy. What is the context? We have the International Atomic Energy Agency in its new annual report on North Korea's nuclear program. It has said that there are indications coming from North Korea where North Korea's plutonium producing reactor at Yongbyon is once again producing plutonium for the first time since the year 2018. 2018 was the last time where they started producing the plutonium from this very reactor. After 2018, now for the very first time in the year 2021, they have resumed the operations in Yongbyon nuclear reactor. This happens to be the reactor which was in talks in the bilateral summit in the year 2019 between Donald Trump, who is the president of United States of America, and leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. According to Kim Jong-un, he said that if United States of America is ready to withdraw the sanctions on North Korea, then he would dismantle this entire process in exchange for securing complete relief during this particular period. But now he has gone back on his words, and at the same time there are operations that are being conducted in this particular nuclear reactor. So what is happening in North Korea? Previously in the year 1994 and also in 2008, similar activities had taken place. North Korea initially promises that it would not want to continue any of the nuclear activities. It also says that it would want to give permission to the International Atomic Energy Agency so that it can come and look whether the activities are suspended or not. But once in the year 1994 and also in the year 2008, it has withdrawn on its promises. So a similar pattern is followed even in the year 2021, where it had said that it wants to suspend the activities in this particular region but continues to exploit the operations, and at the same time has prevented the International Atomic Energy Agency from investigating in this particular premise. So what is the concern here? The concern is that in spite of the United Nations Security Council resolutions that such activities should not be permitted, such activities should not be engaged, such activities should be barred in this particular nuclear reactor, North Korea continues to haunt the world with its practices by exploiting plutonium in this very region. In order to overcome this issue, United States of America had various plans in the past. One was to take precision strikes on all the nuclear sites, but this was not effective, and at the same time there was one of the deals that was taking place in the year 1994. According to this deal, where an executive agreement was to come into picture, United States of America had given two important pointers. One, you suspend all the nuclear activities, and at the same time you ensure that the military sites that are present in North Korea will be investigated, and at the same time inspections by the International Atomic Energy was to take place in this region. But since it did not turn fruitful, the 1994 deal was broken down in the year 2002. So talks were conducted, but unfortunately the talks were not successful. Even during the Trump administration as well, number of talks took place as well. They were almost in the verge of successful accomplishment. Even then, this particular deal in 2018 2019 was not successful. Now the main question of this article is, why does North Korea continue with such nuclear proliferation? That is because it wants to obtain concessions from the international community by threatening the nuclear proliferation. Whenever they face economic problems in their country, what North Korea does, it exploits the sentiments of the world, and it says that it wants to continue with the nuclear proliferation. Whenever there has been an economic doldrum, what they engage is in the nuclear proliferation. What is the current situation? The current situation is the world is witness COVID-19, and this COVID-19 has also hit North Korea very badly as well, since most of their borders are sealed, and in the past few months as well they were not able to increase the economic activity to seek concessions from the international community and also from United States of America. They have taken this adventure of coming up with the nuclear activity and resumption of nuclear activity, ultimately showing the hollowness of the doctrine of deterrence. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says what the Q1 GDP numbers say. This will be discussed as part of the economy this week. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Economic growth is important for improving the lives and livelihoods of citizens, but unsustainable development will spell disaster. Explain the statement with reference to Aravalis. Players selecting Premier League clubs over national duties in sports are violating sports ethics. Do you agree? Justify. So please write all your answers on the comment section. You can also upload your images of the answers on our website as well. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.